So now we are on to season 2, episode 5. This has been the mother lode of them all.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so this, and I mean, right out the gate.
13.
Chapter 13. And again, this is a point, because it did come out today, I feel compelled once again, even though this should come as a surprise to exactly no one that's been watching for more than 10 minutes.
Right.
It's going to be very spoiler heavy. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be happy if you didn't see this episode and you don't want spoilers. I would direct you, in the meantime, to go to the comments section and check out our hilarious reaction video to the Star Wars Holiday Special, where we actually watch it in its entirety and you see it. It's not one of those things where, time it, and all this other stuff. Somehow we actually got away with it. We show it. We show it in a window, and then there's us four on the side of it, and we're just commenting on it the whole time. It's hilarious. So be sure to check that out after we're done with this. And if you didn't see episode 5 or chapter 13, go head over there now and then watch Mandalorian and then come back to this. Okay. Right out the gate.
Yes.
Right out the gate, we see a bunch of people, and then Ahsoka comes out.
Man.
Blazing with the white lightsabers.
Yes, I'm glad they kept the one.
They did.
They kept the white, because I heard she was going to have the blue ones. Because remember, they kept talking about they were going, but then the toys actually had it as the white sabers.
Well, and the thing is, because it was Anakin that rebuilt them as blue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the big controversy with this was the Ahsoka novel, which takes place after the events of Clone Wars Season 7. Well, maybe not all of it, but most of it. She has the white lightsabers again.
Yeah, because in Rebels, she has the white ones.
Right. So I don't really understand why anybody would have been, because I know that this was a topic of conversation, but why was this a thing? She had the white ones in Rebels.
Right.
This takes place after Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
Ergo.
Yeah, she should, but, and especially with Filoni and, being at the helm of that too, why wouldn't she? But anywho, we see Ahsoka Tano come out and she's like laying waste to she's like stalking these things like Michael Myers. Like whatever these little soldier guys just have sand people looking, soldiers.
Yeah, does anybody, Jason, this is really directed to you, but I feel compelled to say, does anybody, I'm so glad we got one of the hardcores on here that's like a little encyclopedia. What were those creatures called that she was fighting in the beginning? He's just going to Google it like we do, but we'll see. It depends on how fast the answer comes. And we have to remember this is probably on a slight delay depending on where you're watching it. But yeah, let us know in the chat what those creatures were called.
Well, in the Wikipedia, they're called mercenaries. That's how they...
That's it?
Yep. They're just called mercenaries. Which
really? They didn't identify and give like an entire backstory?
Hey, that's what they
You know what? They'll do that when the action figures come out.
Right. Well, they're on the planet Corvus. So we initially get that.
There's something special about that planet too.
That's where Ahsoka is. I know, I'm just teasing. No,
okay. See, at least when you were calling into the show, I could just hang up on you. Now I actually have to listen to this stuff. Like I can mute you, but I still see you.
Exactly.
You could still throw stuff at me. So
yes, force throw them actually.
We just end up getting into a fight. I always thought it would be so funny to see, like if a host and a co-host were doing a show, and then all of a sudden they just got into this like wicked fight, but on camera.
Well, even more hilarious, we just pulled out lightsabers and just started dueling.
Yeah, but you know how cheesy that would be?
Yeah, it would be like the going viral.
Dude, yeah, I mean, for all the wrong reasons. It'd be that Star Wars kid all over again.
But yeah, man,
we'd get views, though.
Yeah. But yeah, in this episode, yeah, I think it was really dope. I love, like you said, the imagery of it, like the whole smoky vibe.
Yeah, so now this is going back to what I was talking about these last 3 episodes, episode 3, 4, and 5. It kind of has this smoky,
ominous,
gloomy, Sleepy Hollow kind of thing going. And I gotta say, like that little village that they were in, I'd live there.
I don't know, man. It's kind of...
I loved it, man.
Now, on the inner walls, yes.
Well, I mean, yeah, with the little
whole
canal thing or whatever.
Koi pond that she was
whatever.
standing
But
on.
I mean, it had a really cozy vibe to it. I mean, I kind of like the whole vibe to that. And the weather, I mean, I love it when the weather's like that. When it's kind of gray, like everybody else gets depressed. That's like my favorite stuff, is that really gray, gloomy, Halloween looking, Sleepy Hollow kind of thing. I'm weird. I know. I'm not denying it. I'm just saying. So, I mean, I do love the look. And this episode, as you're pointing out, continues that.
Yeah, definitely. So, and
that sepia tone woods that they were in.
Yeah, and Ahsoka used it to her advantage, definitely. Along with the Force, and just watching her use some Force tricks too. That was still kind of funny how she did the fake throw thing, and then she cut the tree in half and then shot the little log out. So I thought that was cool. I was just, once again, we've seen stills or kind of images, but to actually see her as Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, because to my knowledge, all those stills were mock-ups. They
were mock-ups, but
they weren't like
official.
Actual production stills.
Correct. So to actually see her once again, it translated well.
Very much so.
As far as her look, I mean, the garb all the way down to the little beads she had, I mean, it was just like perfect, which is why you understood why Dave Filoni wanted to direct this episode, because Ahsoka Tano is his baby. But then, so once Din Djarin, eventually shows up in the Razor Crest, he's, basically taking him in to the city, into the city walls. Of course, they're asking like who he is, and he's like, "Oh, you're a hunter? Yep, coming here to chill out." So he goes in and he starts trying to inquire of the vendors about, Ahsoka, but then apparently they're all under some like hush order. And then he's summoned by the magistrate, who is this lady, and she kind of brings him in behind the inner walls where she kind of has this conversation with
Actually,
him.
Jason has a little bit of a tidbit about that. He said, Morgan Elsbeth is the magistrate and Caladan is the name of the city. That is all I could find out in a short amount of time. Well, at least you're on the case. That's good. You know what? While we're at it, let's just take some of these chats. Jason also says, what did you think about Ahsoka's fighting choreography? We'll get there. Right now, we got to do the choreography, the synopsis.
Yeah.
We got to tell everybody what it was about. Ronaldo says, Rosario Dawson looks perfect as Ahsoka. The lightsabers look great in live action. I agree.
Great.
I was really pleasantly surprised by that.
Yep.
Then he also says, maybe I'm the only one who made this comparison, but the beginning of the episode reminded me of the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. I did not actually think about it, but it's true. It very much mirrors that beginning Kylo Ren scene when he's going through that weird forest and,
mowing down all those mercenaries or whatever the heck
whatever they
village
were.
people.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely. I totally agree, man. I mean...
Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Let's get through this so we can actually talk about the episode.
Yep. So, essentially, he goes in, meets with her. She says, hey, you're a Mandalorian. You're the ancient enemy of the Jedi. I got a Jedi I want you to kill. If you kill this Jedi, I'll give you this nice, spear that's made out of a Beskar steel.
Okay, I got to stop right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the first season, we're led to believe that this is like some rare... Now, in this season, everything is made out of Beskar. I mean, everybody seems to have it somewhere.
Well, the Imperials did confiscate it, and
yeah,
she's a
but I
part
mean,
of that
it just
regime.
seemed like everybody, like, oh, I got a couple of pieces of Beskar. You can have this or whatever. It's almost like another form of currency. It's like Disney dollars. But I just think it's really funny because, especially, and I'm not even talking about the later parts of season 1. I mean, more like the earlier parts.
Right.
Everybody's just going on about, oh, it's Beskar. It's rare. Nobody can, to even find like a little bit of it is just enormously, like, astronomical odds and all this stuff. And now, by the time we get into season 2, it's like, it's at every intergalactic drugstore or something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get it. Well, I mean,
but okay, Beskar spear.
Yep, we got the Beskar spear. So he's like, okay, he uses it. He's kind of, using the situation to his advantage. He's like, all right, yeah, sure. Okay. I'm looking for her anyway. So perfect. So, they kind of send him out there and he's, searching for her and she finds him and they get into this little mini battle for a second. And, that's when a lot of people forget that Beskar can actually repel lightsaber
I was going to say, that was one of the things that I was really glad about because that's somewhat of those things that they've sort of brushed upon in lore,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think it actually reached the realm of common knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping that they would show a scene to where they actually show how Beskar can deflect lightsaber,
Yeah.
Strikes. So I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, definitely. So after that, he kind of they kind of get in this little quarrel. Of course, he brings out the flamethrower, and then he kind of yells the name Bo-Katan out to Ahsoka after he mentions her name, and so then she's kind of stops, and he's like, yeah, she sent me to find you, and then she's like, well, I hope it's about this, and she looks towards the child.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure that got her attention.
Yeah, I thought that
instantly.
was hilarious.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, and that's the other thing too, I was wondering how they were going to deal with this.
Yeah, I didn't know if she was going to be able to feel him through the force, or if she was just going to see him.
Well, and that was it. It was kind of like we knew that she was going to pop up in one of the episodes, but we didn't know, exactly how. Now, Jason is wondering, is that the first time that we see that in canon? And he's talking about the Beskar lightsaber duel. Yeah, it's the first time we ever see it in canon. Yes,
but you can read it in canon though.
Yeah, it's been mentioned, but again, you have to really be dialed in to. And I think it was even mentioned in the first season of The Mandalorian. When they first started talking about, I'd have to go back and look, but I remember there was something in The Mandalorian that triggered my memory on that. But it was mentioned, but it's never been, it's like I said, it's not one of those things that a lot of people would really know. And their introduction to that fact actually was probably this episode. But yeah, I was wondering the same thing about the child too. It's like, how are they gonna, because as soon as she sees him,
yeah,
it becomes
instant, wait a minute,
instant. Which of course is interesting because now we finally know his name.
Yep. So
it was really tough. And Ronaldo, you actually made a comment earlier where you mentioned his name in the chat, but we purposely didn't put it in there because we were only on episode 3. And in episode 3, we didn't know his name yet.
Right. But now, we gotten to the point where after their duel, they kind of said Ahsoka sits down with the child and they communicate kind of telepathically with each other. And that's when she brings the child over to Din Djarin and they have a conversation. And then she brings up, she's like, well, hey, Grogu here is, and then he's like, huh?
Yeah, Grogu. Like, I mean, now what do you think of his name?
Yeah. First thing for me, I thought about Groot.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too.
And I was like, is this like an I Am Groot thing? Because that's totally what it reminded me of.
I mean, because I actually saw this episode twice. Like, I happened to be up pretty much all night last night. I don't think I went to bed till 6. And it was a little after 4 or whatever, and I'm looking over, I'm like, yeah, Mandalorian's on. Because being that we're in Eastern Standard Time, yeah, it comes out midnight Pacific time. But for us, it's 3 a.m. I'm like, you know what? I don't have to work tomorrow. I'm going to watch it now. And then I started thinking about it okay, I wasn't exactly the most awake when I saw it, although I was surprisingly awake, so I decided to watch it again. And Grogu, I mean, I like it more now than I did when I first heard it.
Okay.
But I mean, I don't really have a problem with it.
No, it doesn't bother me.
Honestly, I hate the name Yaddle more than I hate Yaddle.
I thought the name was going to actually start with a Y. I thought it was a thing for those, everybody's name starts with a Y.
Yeah. Well, and Jason actually just makes that point. He says, I was surprised there was no Y in the name.
Yep. Because I thought it was going to be Yoguru or something like that.
Okay, this is turning into Wheel of Fortune now. But I mean, no, it's true. It is interesting in the sense of that we've only seen 2 other examples of the species. Both of them have a Y name.
Right. So
you would think.
Yeah. Now, as we're, discovering, and this is the cool thing, is we actually get to discover a lot about Grogu now. Now we know his name. And then now we're on this where we learned that he was actually a Padawan in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant and during the Clone Wars. And what happened was that once the Empire took over, they actually hid him and they told him pretty much like, hey, don't showcase your powers, you know.
Yeah, it actually becomes very Jedi Fallen Order, as a lot of these things are, which, by the way, if you are a PS4 or...
Now PS5.
Yeah, now PS5, but if you... they got a good Black Friday deal going now. It's like, it's like I'm dropping a commercial in here, but it's like $24. I've been tempted to get it, even though I've been obsessed with the new Call of Duty game. So I don't know when I would have time to play it, but it's like, I kind of want to get it at that price because it's got a lot of canon in it. And it really also reminds me of Kanan's story in A New Dawn, where it pretty much almost mirrors exactly the Fallen Order thing, where he hides his powers, he just decides to live his life as a normal guy or whatever, and then Hera slowly pulls him into, the other thing. But my question is, who... She said, if you remember, she said somebody hid him or somebody took him out or whatever.
Right.
So my question is, who? Because it almost sounded like it wasn't a they, it was a him or a her. Mm-hmm. So you got to wonder who that was.
Well, they even said, like, he was a Jedi initiate before the Clone Wars and was trained by many Jedi masters in the ways of the Force. He was taken from the temple, hidden from the Empire for many years, and his memories during those times are filled with darkness and fear. She inquires to Din Djarin the abilities of Grogu and explains to him the nature of the Force as an energy field between all living things. And then
she gives the Obi-Wan explanation, which I actually thought was kind of a nice touch.
I did too, yeah. I thought that was cool. And of course, she also just says that, she's only met like one of his species, and that was, of course, Yoda. So I thought that was just cool, just to kind of bring his name.
It was cool that they name dropped Yoda, I gotta say.
Yeah. And so...
Ronaldo ended up making the same. He says, now the big question is, who took him out of the temple?
Right. And so now, and so at least we have a little bit of backstory on Grogu. So... Grogu. What did I say? Grogu?
Yeah,
Grogu.
I mean, that's another thing. Of all the things you could have named, you had to do something that was like hard to say.
Yeah.
You actually have to think Grogu.
Yeah, Grogu. Yeah. See?
What up, G?
Yep. Hey, kid.
There you go. Baby Yoda.
Exactly.
That's right. The Baby Yoda name will stay.
So
now we can call him Baby Grogu.
So that's pretty much like that part. And then of course he's kind of tired, so they decide to wait till the morning to actually do his Force test to kind of see, his abilities. And of course, Ahsoka kind of picks up a rock, tosses at him with the Force, and he takes it, but then she's like, all right, now pass it back, and he doesn't do it. He just kind of drops it. And that's
the funniest line in the world to me. Actually, one of the funniest things in The Mandalorian was when, she said, like, well, he'll listen to you or something, and you were like, well, that would be the first time or something.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just so funny to me. Because he is kind of stubborn.
Well, yeah, because he can't communicate really with him, so it's kind of like he understands. He probably thinks he understands to a certain degree.
Well, he was surprised that, first of all, he kept tripping out that when he said his name,
he would turn his
head like he knew. And then, he was all like, oh, he doesn't. She's like, no, he understands, what you're saying to him. Mm-hmm. But it was funny that, they gave him that little knob off of the ship. And he took that with the quickness, too. Yep. He's like, yep.
That's my thing. So, that was really cool. And then, what I thought was really interesting, though, because it's something we've never really heard before or really thought about, but we kind of mentioned it a little bit, that what if he was a little bit dark side guy? And when she said she saw this, fear and darkness in him.
Very Anakin-like.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, too, because she also, in a way, is like, yeah, even to the best of us, this happened. She was referring to Anakin.
Yep.
And the thing that's funny about it, too, is that, do you remember, I think I showed it to you, where somebody, I don't even remember where it came from, but there's that rendition of a dark side Yoda.
Mm-hmm. That's sweet.
I would like to see that in a movie.
Well, they actually even did the dark side version of Yoda in Clone Wars.
That's true.
when he was actually trying to learn he was fighting himself basically.
Yeah, that's
so I
true.
thought that was cool.
That was cool. And I mean, it would be interesting to see what would happen if one of these species turned to the dark side. I don't in a million years think they're going to do that. But still.
Yeah, but here's another thing too. I noticed that Ahsoka has said is like, maybe we should just like don't train him and let it just pass. Like basically like let him forget about his Force abilities. And it's like, so you can actually do that.
Well, Luke did it.
Well, Luke consciously did it though. Like he consciously cut himself
and it's true
off
because
from the Force.
she even said, hey, does he still remember how to use the Force or whatever? And it's like, well, use the magic hands. I would have cracked up if he had said that when it's like, well, see if you can get him to do it. Okay, use the magic hands. that still I think is probably the funniest.
Yeah, that's one of the funniest lines of like in the whole series.
Because I did not see that coming. And especially from him.
Well, yeah, especially that's what you would call it because you don't know.
That's what makes it so hilarious is how this current, let's just call it generation, understands. They don't really understand the Force. They don't really get it. So they just kind of see these things and like, yeah, use the magic hands. That was great.
Dwight says, you don't forget, it just fades. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, how does it... I mean, I know it's like one of those things, like if you don't use it, you lose it kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than if you don't...
work out or something like that.
Yeah,
like
or
you don't forget how to work out, you just...
Or whatever it is, whatever it is that you're trying to do, maybe you just don't... It's sort of like you forget how to do it and you have to practice again. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's happened. There's been a couple of times where I've gone a long time without playing bass. And it's not that I've forgotten, but there's some songs that if I don't play them, I'm like, I don't even remember how this goes now. Mm-hmm. And they're things that we've written, like originals I'm talking about.
Right.
So it does stand to reason that you could do that.
Dwight said she even said it on the show, let it fade. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, argue with that one.
One thing I've learned in my life is never argue with Dwight. But he apparently agrees.
Yes, he does.
But yeah, so... yeah, I think that's just one of those, I think this is one of those things where you really kind of see how different people, respond to the Force, like you're seeing like Ahsoka from a different, cause you normally, the old Ahsoka would have been like, oh yeah, let's just, it's a little Master Yoda, like awesome. Like I get to have a hand in training it. Sweet. But now she understands like, no, I've seen what this can do. Like I get it now.
Changes the man kind of thing. You know what
exactly.
I mean? It's like, but you do bring up another really excellent point though, in that we should address this now is the difference between Ahsoka from early Clone Wars, later Clone Wars, Rebels, and then now in Mandalorian. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely a conscious decision to somewhat keep the basic parts of her personality, but make her older, wiser, that kind of a thing. Because I remember when we were first really excited about Clone Wars Season 7 coming out, and, they basically were saying, like, okay, Ashley pretty much was used to playing Ahsoka in Rebels, who had matured and was... a lot older and she was wiser and stuff like that. And she was like, I actually had to really go back and watch some older episodes. I had to try to get back in the mindset of playing a younger version of this character, which isn't just about changing your voice. It's also about...
your demeanor. Like
your demeanor, like how you're carrying yourself kind of, like the different things you would say and do.
It's like a confidence that you might have in your voice when you're older versus when you're younger.
Yeah, and just kind of like maybe a more... maturity and a solemnness or something. I mean, you definitely see a lot of growth there.
Yeah, the chats are blowing up. So
yeah, I see that. We should probably address that.
Jason says that one line should not discount everything we have seen from Force users before. Luke cut himself on the Force, but when he returned, he was still powerful.
Yeah, but then again, in his defense, he's also the grandson of the Force, so I think you can't necessarily... This is the thing that I caution people in. don't apply the same rules as you do the Skywalkers to the other Force users.
True.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't look at Anakin. You can't look at Luke and say, well, Anakin and Luke did this.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, Anakin and Luke were actually born of the Force.
Yeah, they're like...
So you can't really... I mean, I get what you're saying.
That's like comparing Michael Jordan to the rest of the guys in the NBA. I'm like, no, you can't do that.
Not Jason. Ronaldo says, I like that during the climax, we have a samurai-style fight, and on the other side, we have a Western shooting.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was cool.
Even had the whole garden, that whole koi pond on that bridge.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
It was totally like one of those Karate Kid moments. Yeah,
samurai films or whatever.
Yep.
I mean, that's a really good point. I really thought that was a cool juxtaposition, and it really gives you that. It's almost remember the TV series Kung Fu with David Carradine? The whole idea behind that series was to make like a karate type, samurai type film, but set in the Old West and give it a Western vibe. And that's, I think, what's happening with this show is that you have, on one hand, this Clint Eastwood style, character, basically, from like the old Sergio Leone films, which I've actually been in the middle of watching. It's hilarious. I've never seen them.
Wow.
So I saw A Fistful of Dollars. I'm in the middle of For a Few Dollars More, and then of course I got to see The Good, Bad, and the Ugly. But I just thought I'd throw that in there. Jason says, also, it is very difficult to stop using the Force completely. Yeah, I agree with that too. I think what Ahsoka meant is that without training, he really wouldn't be all that powerful compared to other Jedi. I think that would depend, though, on his natural, like the species' natural Force ability. I think that's one variable that we have to be careful about how we say that, because
definitely
I would actually agree with that point for most. But with that species, I don't know. I think that we still need a few more variables before we do that. Ronaldo says, it was really cool to finally see a fight between a Jedi and a Mandalorian in live action. Totally agree. And it did not disappoint. And then finally, for this round anyway, Jason says, I think you can apply the same rules to Skywalkers as you do the other Jedi, but with more power for the Skywalkers, just like Michael Jordan to other basketball players. Yeah, I can sort of see that. But again, I think that there's certain characteristics, because you got to remember the Force is more a part of them because they were born in the Force. So naturally, the Force isn't going to completely fade away from them, because the Force, it's kind of like part of them. They can close themselves off to it, but it's almost like a dam. It's like the water's still there. You might put a wall there, but it's still there. With the Skywalkers, it's simply lifting the dam and letting the water flow back. With other Jedi, it would be more like a lake drying up.
Yeah, it's with the Skywalkers, I think you just really have to look at it from just and that's why I use the Michael Jordan, analogy. It's almost like a natural. I mean, although he worked hard at his craft, of course, but I mean, it's just like Michael Jordan was able to do things that was almost just like effortless, and that other basketball players were just like, marveling. Even if I put that much time in the gym, I don't think I could ever be that good. And I think there's a thing when you have a natural ability, and then when you train with that just heightens it all, versus, okay, like your ability can only allow you maybe to go so far. And then you can just only work to the maximum of your ability, sure. But that still may not be like, I can't do what Shaq can do. He's...
Right, and then of course, I leave any of the Sith out of that, because their whole path is a little bit different.
Right.
But, yeah, I just think... ultimately, we just have to wait and see. But, I mean, I do agree, though, that in a lot of ways, it's kind of like, well, it's like anything else. It's muscle memory. Like, for instance, if you're completely out of shape and you get into shape, it's different than if you were already in shape, got out of shape, and then try to get back in shape. Because if you were a former athlete or somebody who worked out a lot and you let yourself get out of shape, once you start working out again, your body's like, oh yeah, this again. Whereas if you were never in shape to begin with, and now you're getting in shape, you're teaching your muscles new things. And I think that you can make that comparison too with the Force, that I think aligns a little bit more with what Jason's trying to say. Whereas it's like it never really completely goes away. It's sort of like you can let it fade, but it wouldn't necessarily disappear completely.
Right.
And I would agree with that because, again, the Force is in all living things. It binds us. It brings, all that stuff. So it's kind of like, well, it's there, but it just depends on how you tap into it. And it also depends on how you alert other Force users, too, because that was one of the reasons why a lot of these guys didn't use the Force or try not to tap into it, because other Force users can sense that.
Right.
And I think that's more what we're talking about. And I think that that's going to be really interesting to see, because that's another thing. Besides the, Ahsoka, this is great. I mean, and it was, including the bomb that they drop at the end of this thing. But I think what's more interesting to me is just how much story arc we got into this thing.
Yeah. Now, Ronaldo asked a question earlier about the choreography of the fighting of Ahsoka.
Oh, yeah, he did, didn't he?
Now, I will say that, what I thought was really cool is that they kept it to a lot of what she normally did. Like, I like the way that she held her sabers. It was exactly the way that Ahsoka did.
Exactly.
Her stances and everything like that was exactly how
I was blown away. It was literally like watching the animated Ahsoka in live action.
Some of the flips that she would do was exactly like Ahsoka's. I mean,
when she got harpooned or what? Well, it wasn't a true harpoon, but the cable.
The fiber cord, yeah.
Yeah. And then she just ended up flipping up, and I mean, I thought that was a very Ahsoka-like thing to do. Dwight.
Yeah, does anyone know why they shortened her I forgot how you say it. Moptrals, yeah, there you go. Thank you. When they were supposed to grow with age, or is it just a byproduct of bringing them into live action? Well, yeah, hers are a little bit shorter.
Yes, but
from Rebels.
Yes, but we don't know. Just like, okay, when you're young and you grow up, right, and you reach say adulthood, middle age, but then as you get older, you start to shrink, muscles start to go. How do we know that as you age, once you reach that apex, you start to go down,
start going on the decline?
Maybe they start to shrivel up.
Well, the other thing, too, I did notice on those, she has some scars, too.
Yeah.
Which I'm wondering, did that come from her fight with Vader?
So Jason says, I didn't like the spear fight at the end, but the rest was great. Mando versus Ahsoka was awesome, though. Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I'm glad that they didn't dwell on the spear fight too much. I too was a little bit let down by that.
Well, see, the spear fight, the problem with that once again, I mean, that honestly should have been over in a half a second.
Half a second. Because, and here's my other complaint. This ties into it. I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to Kanye you right now. But basically, I had to say this before I forget it. I really thought that one of the biggest weaknesses of the way that they portrayed Ahsoka in this is she didn't use the Force as much as she should have. It's another pet peeve of mine.
But I think she did that intentionally. I mean,
there were times, though, that she really should have used it when, I mean, anybody would use it. They're just doing it because of either practicality or the effects.
Well, I think that she's trying to minimize using it in that type of capacity where, like you said earlier, other Force users,
But they know. She's running around using it sometimes, and she's running around with lightsabers.
Yeah, but it's in a confined space. You know what I'm saying? She was, I mean, we don't know how long she was at that particular location. And then, her whole purpose is trying to take over that place back and give it back to its rightful owner. So she pretty much knew she was probably going to have to waste everybody in that place anyway. So there's no one really left around to tell. But I think that, I think that that's part of the reason. The issue I have with it, though, is that, one, she went up against Maul and she went up against Vader. Why are you struggling fighting this chick?
Yeah, that's exactly.
What I mean? That's my biggest thing.
She should have been able to mow that chick down in half a second.
It should have been that Obi-Wan versus Maul fight. That's what it should have been.
That was cool, and it was cool for that reason, because where Obi-Wan was at that time, It's
Yeah.
kind of like, listen, dude, you're not fighting the little Padawan that you were fighting back then.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, I'm pretty much like a full-fledged Jedi master at this point, and you showed him. And yeah, that Maul fight was like 30 seconds or something. And that's, this is something that they always do that I really hate. They always have to, they did the same thing in a way in season 1 with Mando, is the fact that they made him unnecessarily underpowered so that way they can give him new challenges every week.
Let's see.
Be Ronaldo with this episode. This episode made me wonder, at what point did the Jedi give up the idea of not having attachments? Because apparently Ahsoka still follows that rule. I don't know if she's necessarily following the rule or if it's kind of like she's in hiding and it's kind of like, you don't want a whole lot of stuff.
No, I mean, I know what Ronaldo's saying, and I agree. Because, she was like, well, he's too attached to you. That's what she kept saying. He was like, you're too, he's views you as a father figure. He's too attached to you. And he was like, well, so, he's like, well, that's going to fuel his fear. Saying, like, if something were to happen to you or he's worried about you, that's going to fuel his fear because he's already experienced loss and darkness and things of that nature. He's already been left alone before. So that's what's going to kind of pretty much hinder him from really probably becoming who he really should be, or it could lead him to the dark side.
Yep. Jason says, I don't think they did give up their ideas about attachments.
Yeah, especially by the time Ahsoka left, remember she left the order. So at the time, she still is under the impression that they still follow that same rule.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense. Jason goes on to say it should have been over in half a second and the spear was wielded like a staff. Yeah, but I mean, if that's what you got.
What else you
yeah, what else are you going to do?
Dwight says she was not trying to kill her, just trying to make her submit so she can get the info.
That part's true, too.
That's true.
I will actually go along with that.
Most times we do with Dwight.
Which Jason agrees.
Yep.
And then Dwight goes on.
She was willing to fight, but didn't want to, which is why she stopped every time the magistrate did. Yeah, I think that once again though,
but what you're saying is
he could have she could have disarmed her.
And I think that's what we mean. It's not necessarily like a point of killing.
Her.
It's really more of a point like the fight shouldn't have been going on at all. She needed information.
Or she could have just took the staff from her.
That's my thing. Force again. Use the force. She could have. I mean, granted, I know she's not going to choke her out because that's a dark side thing.
Although she's no Jedi.
True. But I mean, she could have like force pushed her. She could have taken the staff away. It's like you're dealing with a non-force user. I just have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's different if you're a Mandalorian or you're a warrior guy that's used to fighting armed people. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're somebody like her, and granted, I know she's no slouch when it comes to fighting too, but I don't know, man. I think that fight should have ended a lot sooner.
But I think, once again, they just had to give us an Ahsoka battle. It's like you got Ahsoka here. She's,
Well, here's a thought. Do you think that this is going to be the only episode she's in this season?
Oh, no. No.
Really?
No.
No, I don't either. But I don't think she's going to pop up till the finale.
Exactly.
And she's going to fight Gideon with the Darksaber.
Exactly. And I also think Bo-Katan is going to show up too.
Oh, everybody is.
Yeah, it's going to be like the whole cavalry showing up.
Everybody.
Because I think this is what I see. My predictions for the remainder of at least the finale. I won't say the remainder, but the finale. I believe there's going to be a situation where those dark troopers, pretty much is what they're calling them so far.
Oh yeah, they're going
to show up.
Sure, they're going to be unleashed,
and it's going to be unleashed, and he's going to need people that's going to help. So I think that's we're going to get Grief Karga back, Cara Dune. We're going to get Bo-Katan and the rest of her people. And then we're going to get Ahsoka to kind of join in the fray. And then it's going to be like one big little climactic battle.
And then Jason says, what if the magistrate is force sensitive? That'd be kind of cheesy.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't either. I mean, why not? But I mean, it would at least explain why she could. But if the magistrate were force sensitive, she would use the force, I would think.
Definitely, because she would have no reason to hide it.
Oh, Ronaldo's got an interesting question. How many spin-off series do you think can be taken out of this season? I think at least 3. What are your 3, Ronaldo?
Yeah.
You knew we were going to turn that back on you, buddy.
Dwight says it would have been cool to hear her say after Force choking her, "I'm no Jedi." Man,
Oh, that would have
Dwight,
been. Yeah, that would have been.
fam. That's all I'm saying.
That would have been awesome.
I would have lost my mind. Like, let's go.
Yeah, that would have been. But the problem with that, though,
I know.
the problem with that is then you would wonder, because unfortunately, and of course, if you go back to our whole nature of the Force thing, which is really in depth and crazy, that Jason and Ronaldo were actually very active in.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, at least the way that it stands to most, if you're not light, you're dark. Now, of course, we went on and we said, no, that's not true, and blah, 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 whatever. But the point is, simplicity is going to have to rule in a TV series, I think. And then Dwight also goes and says that...
At least 3.
Yeah, he's thinking at least 3.
Ronaldo, yep. No.
And, well, we know that Boba Fett's going to be spun off.
Mm-hmm.
They had so much to announce that.
Yep.
There's been a rumor that there's going to be a Cara Dune series, which I could see.
But let's get to the big
yeah, the
bombshell.
big bombshell.
Yeah, we got to hit this one, man. So she finally defeats the magistrate. And she finally asks, "Where's your master? Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?"
Yes, which means we are going to get a live-action Thrawn. Now, the interesting thing about this is when people were starting to talk about Ahsoka's inevitable appearance, they started talking about Thrawn.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a lot of YouTube videos about all this Thrawn speculation, and I'm like, well, I wonder what's that all about? Because the Thrawn speculation that's happened before now has always been there's supposed to be some spin-off series of Thrawn and Ezra. That's been the purveying thing. That Thrawn is definitely being considered for a series, but this is what it's going to be, and like kind of their Outer Rim adventures or whatever. Now, from that standpoint, it makes sense then to introduce him in this and then spin him off, much like what they plan to do with Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
However, it didn't surprise me in the sense of I was somewhat ready for it, because when you start to see like a bunch of rumors and a ton of videos being made, somebody heard something from somewhere.
Right.
But it was chill-inducing, almost like when they brought him into Rebels and they announced it at Star Wars Celebration.
Right.
And, all of us Thrawn, because remember, I've been into Thrawn since 91. 1991, when Heir to the Empire came out, Thrawn was in there. I was a Thrawn fan from the first page that I read about him, and have been ever since. So when you actually heard the name Thrawn being mentioned in this show, even though I was half expecting it, I kind of wanted to cry a little bit. Ronaldo says, one with Boba Fett, the other with Ahsoka, and the other with Bo-Katan. Didn't think about Bo-Katan.
Jason says, "I did not like that Thrawn was so closely associated with such a cruel person. He is not extremely caring, but he prefers low casualties. The magistrate does not care about life at all."
Well, but you got to look back at Governor Price, too. She basically had almost the same attitude. And, of course, you find out in the, in new canon books that actually Price is not as shallow and evil. I mean, she does sort of become that way, but you see why, and you see what her deal is. So Thrawn will use anybody as a tool. Don't forget that in the expanded universe, when Thrawn was created, he created that weird Jedi master named Joris C'baoth, who was like insane. So Thrawn's the kind of guy that even though he himself is honorable, and especially in the new canon version of the books, he's really like almost a good guy. It's weird. But, yeah, he's definitely going to be that guy that's going to get things done. And he does have a cruel side.
Let's see. Dwight says, you couldn't bring her back without including Thrawn because that is what she was doing after the Empire fell.
Yeah, and Dwight brings up a good point, because don't forget that you somewhat have to go back to that final episode of Rebels where they give you this epilogue, And a lot of that epilogue is taking place after Return of the Jedi. So you kind of, that's sort of a prequel to The Mandalorian in a sense.
Jason says, do you think we are going to finally get an accurate pronunciation of Thrawn's actual name, which I'm not even going to try to.
It's Mithra Neuro. No, okay, whatever.
Yep, exactly.
I can say it like when I'm reading it usually, but yeah. You know what? Probably. I mean, if they're bringing him in, it would be kind of cool. Jason also says Thrawn was associated with the Empire, but the Empire is extremely powerful. Teaming with the Empire was a necessary evil. The magistrate does not hold that much power. And then Ronaldo says, first of all, I almost passed out with that name drop. Well, I'm glad you're still with us and you came to enough to join us here. Second, this made me ask a big question. Who is in charge, Gideon or Thrawn? Thrawn. Right. Are they working together or are they fighting each other to see who leads the Empire?
That's the big question.
Well, yes and no. But see, the problem is, the beauty is we kind of have the Aftermath books and some of these other things which they have brought into the series. So what's happening in the Aftermath trilogy, which admittedly probably takes place between Return of the Jedi and this series. Part of the final book, which escapes me. Life Debt's the second one. Aftermath's the first one. For some reason, I can't remember the third one. But the third one might brush up against this timeline a little bit, but not by much if it does. So you have to remember that during this time period, you have a bunch of Grand Admirals and Grand Moffs and all this stuff trying to be the guy. Now, we know that Grand Admiral Thrawn was in the unknown regions with Ezra at some unspecified time. This would allow them to fight and to do all this stuff. I guarantee you, as soon as Thrawn comes back, everybody's going to basically align with him. We also don't know...
Empire's End, by the way.
Empire's End, that was it. We also don't know if Thrawn and Gideon are working together. That's absolutely a possibility. Absolutely. Because, and we brought this up, I think, a week ago, we really don't know who Gideon is.
Right.
Why does Gideon have the Darksaber? Why is he only a Moff, yet he acts like he's more of a Grand Moff? Mm-hmm. You know, where does he fit in the Empire? He seems like he's a pretty high-up guy. Or maybe he just has a really good chunk of the remnants, because Ray Sloan has a bunch. Oh, man, I swore I would not do this today. What's the guy? Hux. General Hux's dad was really prominent during this time. And he was big. He had a good chunk of the Empire, too. So you had a bunch of guys that had, like, really big, giant chunks of the Empire, and they were sort of trying to outdo each other and stab each other in the back and take over their things. But then you had these small little, kind of like Werner Herzog's character. You had guys like him who, I mean, it turns out he was working for Gideon, but you just had people like that, like these warlord guys that had a little bit of enough of like a garrison or something. Mm. So it would be interesting. Jason goes on to say, I think Thrawn are separate. I don't think Thrawn is even part of the Empire. Why would he return to a dying Empire instead of staying and fighting the Grisk? Also, where was Thrawn in the sequels? Well, you have to remember that Thrawn was in the unknown regions during this time. And in fact, the new book that just came out is talking about his time in the unknown regions. It's a little bit of a prequel, though, but I think it's setting up to when he and Ezra went out. So he went out. He didn't know the Empire had fallen. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to align the story with the original expanded universe. You have to remember that in the original expanded universe, the introduction of Thrawn took over after Palpatine fell. And he had a right-hand man named Paleon, Admiral Paleon. And basically, he had this idea of how to return the Empire to its former glory. I also have a feeling that given his closeness with Palpatine Palpatine probably clued him in on this whole, hey, I'm going to come back plan. Now I need you to go back and here's what I need you to do. So I think that we're going to get a little bit of that too. Ronaldo, of course, comes in and says Empire's End is the third book. Love you guys. Jason says General Hux wasn't a military leader. He was a teacher. Yeah, but you have to remember that he went on. If you read, what book was it? Empire's End, actually. He had started forming along with, because he was trying to remember, they had formed some committee or something like that where they were going to try to govern things, which, of course, somewhat fell apart, but it was a mess.
Yeah, I mean, with Gideon...
Brendel Hux. Yes, thank you, Ronaldo. His name was Brendel Hux. And then Jason, of course, says, yeah. That was it.
Yeah, well, Gideon being like a member of the ISB, which is basically like the Imperial Security Bureau. Basically, that's kind of like their
internal affairs, actually.
Yeah. So they're kind of like, he was pretty much a high up ranking.
They popped up in the Thrawn books.
Mm-hmm.
And they also popped up in Aftermath as well. And by Aftermath, I mean the trilogy, not just the first book.
Gotcha.
So it looks like, I think that we can get from this, that they're really trying to hit the Aftermath trilogy. They're really trying to, in a sense, bring that in.
Mm-hmm.
And
to a live action situation.
Yeah, to kind of a live action situation. And then they're also trying to bring in a little bit of the whole Rebels thing as well. Jason says, I don't think Thrawn was very trusted by Palpatine. There's a lot of truth to that, actually. Palpatine used him because of his knowledge of the unknown regions and his military skill. But here's something that I've been curious about, too, ever since reading the new Thrawn trilogy, particularly the first book. Palpatine is talking about, and this is really reiterated big time in the Aftermath books, he's talking about a dark force that's calling out to him from the unknown regions.
Mm-hmm.
We still don't know what that is. And it makes me wonder, because Exegol being in the unknown regions, it's sort of like he figured that out. Maybe it was the Sith Acolytes. Who knows?
Could be the Grisk.
No, because the Grisk weren't really about, though. They were more like kind of like the enemies that the High Republic are going to face, like your pirates and your warrior guys. And the Grisk would actually be more akin to a Mandalorian type. Maybe a combination of them and the Yuuzhan Vong. That's who I was really hoping would make the return. I was hoping they'd bring the Yuuzhan Vong back into this whole thing somehow. Which they could. I mean, obviously, it would have to be different from what's in the expanded universe, but they could new canonize it a bit.
So, do you all ask Jason and Ronaldo this question? And Dwight, do you think
they're going to say, man, you're not going to leave out Dwight, are you?
Of course not. Do you think they're going to bring Ezra back?
Well, I do. I don't know if he's going to be in the second season. I think that would be more of a third season.
But I'm saying like at all, period, like in this.
Sure, because story. The whole idea is there's supposed to be some. Now, again, I know things can change on an almost daily basis over at Lucasfilm, but I think that you have to look at it from the standpoint of they've been talking about a spin-off series between Thrawn and Ezra. What a perfect way to do it. I mean, once they're bringing Thrawn into this, it's kind of like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also really surprised, too, because it seemed like Gideon was going to be the ultimate bad guy in this.
Well, yeah, there's always somebody else, honestly.
Always a bigger fish.
Now, Ronaldo poses a question that I'm glad he proposed, because I was actually going to lead into this. So another big question is, who will be the Jedi that will feel Grogu when Din Djarin takes him to Tython?
Oh, I should also mention, too, the Tython, I don't know what they're going to do with it in this version of canon, but in the expanded universe, Tython was actually the origin place of the Jedi. So it's really interesting that they bring it here. I really can't wait to see what they do with that. But it's a good question.
So here's the
I know everybody thinks it's Luke.
I'm thinking it could be Luke, or it could be Ezra.
I would bet more money on Ezra.
Maybe that's how they bring Ezra back.
I would bet it would make more sense because Ezra at this point is a Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
He would have some background, not like Ahsoka would, but he has some. So I could see that being a thing. Mm-hmm. Because again, and don't get me wrong, guys, it would actually make sense for it to be Luke, because one of the problems I said of bringing the Jedi into this time period is you almost have to bring Luke back at some point because he's the man.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you got too much stuff going on and especially because here's my thing: if you got a strong Force user like Grogu, you know what I'm saying, and
you have to think about that before you say
it. So then, you know, okay, he's calling out from like one of the ancient Jedi temples. Luke's got to feel that.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of like,
so is he
Luke is rebuilding the thing. He's rebuilding like the Jedi Prime at this point.
Exactly.
Like, you know, if there's all this Force stuff going on, he's got to feel it. Mm-hmm. He has to know something's up.
Yep. Especially between that and either it's got to be him or Ezra.
So then Dwight says, Sabine too, unless something happens to her off the grid. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and we actually dealt with this, I think, probably before you got on, is that even though our whole thing of Sasha Banks playing Sabine turned out not to be true, that does not rule out Sabine being brought in. My personal opinion, though, and I think you shared this as well, is that Sabine's probably going to be more of a season 3 than a season 2 character.
Yeah.
And it would make more sense because you would then, once the Darksaber is away from Gideon and once they do whatever they're going to do, who's going to rule Mandalore or Mandalorians? Is it going to be Bo-Katan? Is it going to be Sabine? You know, I mean, there's a little bit of a power struggle there. Jason says, I don't think Luke is coming to the Mandalorian yet. And that's the thing. I don't know if he would pop up. I could see him popping up, though, because it would almost, if you bring too much of this whole Jedi stuff into it, it's like you almost have to put him in there.
Mm-hmm.
It would
at least
actually
mention him. Yeah.
Yes, or at least mention him, because it would actually it would destroy the storyline more by not bringing him in than it would be. It's not a fan service thing. Ronaldo says, I think it will be Ezra. But if it had to be someone else, I think it would be Luke. The last option would be Cal Kestis. That name rings a bell. Who is Cal? Dwight agrees. And then Jason says they could also make it a new Jedi or one we did not know survived the Purge. That would be convenient. This would be a great opportunity to bring Kip Duran back from the expanded universe. I mean, we're bringing everybody else in. No love for Kip? Come on. Yeah, I mean, I just think that, again, they have to do something that makes sense to the story. They are far enough out that maybe it doesn't get on Luke's radar yet because he's trying to build stuff, but you have to wonder, if Ahsoka's been running around all this time, you would think that she had to have heard of this Luke Skywalker guy. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, his name would be
Skywalker.
Sure, he would be all over the place because of the Death Star destruction. You don't necessarily have to know that he was a Jedi and all this stuff, but you probably have heard this guy's name in Contact of the Rebellion. As soon as you hear Luke Skywalker, Ahsoka's going to go, whoa, wait a minute. Hold it.
Right.
I got to go check this out. Mm-hmm. And if she did seek out Luke, which would make sense that she would, because she might feel his connection in the Force, given that she was so connected to Anakin.
Yep.
I know it would make sense. Plus, they still have to figure out, they still have to explain. And if they've already explained this adequately, let me know. But there's still that whole ending of Rebels where Vader goes back and visits, her lightsabers that she buried in the snow.
Well, that's my thing, too, because I was going to bring that up, is that the cool thing that we got in this episode was that we got to learn a lot about Grogu, but the other thing we didn't know, we didn't get any information on was her. Like, where has she been?
Yeah, that's a good point because I think we have been so wrapped up in, oh, it's Ahsoka live action and, ooh, white lightsabers and, oh, look, she's flipping and, oh, she looks exactly like that. We are kind of like, wait a minute, what's she been doing?
Yeah, exactly.
But what part of it is because we got a little bit of that epilogue in Rebels. But you're right, it's not that much. I mean,
yeah,
it's interesting. Oh yeah, from Fallen Order, right?
But I think going back to the Ahsoka piece, though, I think that part of it is because if you notice, she never when she talked to Din Djarin about okay, like I've seen it happen to the best. It was like she never mentioned like, oh yeah, my former master became Darth Vader. Like Din Djarin would know about that, like, and he was like, like, wait, that was your master, so.
It's not the kind of thing that you go off just bragging about. Too,
well, no, but what I'm saying is that
look what happened to Leia, man.
Well, yeah, true. But I mean, what I'm saying is that when you stop and really think about it, because we talked earlier about casual fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
So casual fans may not know who this Ahsoka Tano person is. We do, but they don't. So.
Yeah,
to
but
them,
if you think
she's just a random Jedi, is what I'm saying.
Right.
To them, she's just a random Jedi, but we know her whole backstory. So the fact that maybe they're leading up to the fact that like she's going to reveal who she really is, and then, okay, look, yes, Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader. That was my master at one point. Here we are, blah 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 blah. But that's all I'm saying is that there's still a part of her story that has not officially been told to people in a live action setting, that people who are invested in the Mandalorian. We just know it based upon the Clone Wars animation.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I mean, it's one of those things that I think that there's enough. I think there's more question about what Luke was doing during those 30 years between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens than there are what Ahsoka was doing. Because remember, Ahsoka left the Jedi Order. And that stood. I mean, it wasn't like she went back and she became a Jedi again. She went back and worked with the Jedi, but she made it very clear, even in that last season, that she wasn't about that life anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get a little bit of like Cal from Jedi Fallen Order. It's like, okay, you're just kind of, or Kanan even. You just sort of get a real job. Even though I do have to say, one of the things that I thought was kind of a double entendre in a way that I was like, was when she was kind of like, what was it?
Oh, like I like first good
yeah,
or bad.
like first times they're either like really good or really bad. I'm like,
that's all right.
Oh, what are you talking about there, Ahsoka?
Hey, it applies.
I mean,
It penetrates, it binds us.
Yeah. Ronaldo says, or what if the one who comes looking for Grogu is not a Jedi but a dark side user? That would be a cool twist. Yeah, that would be a cool twist. Jason says, do you think Ahsoka has found Ezra yet? Or is she tracking down Thrawn because she knows Ezra is with him? An interesting option would be that she sent Grogu to Tython to try and guide Ezra to Tython. Yeah, see, these are all really, really amazing points because they could, being that Favreau and Filoni are just so dialed into the canon, it would actually make sense that they would put together, like if it were anybody else, I'd say no way. But being as those guys, I'm like, yeah, it probably is.
Well, I could see, I think that's why Ahsoka wanted to know where Thrawn was.
Yeah, because really,
because why would she care?
Exactly, why would she care? And that's the thing that's a little strange.
Yeah, like if he's gone into the unknown regions, he's not bothering anybody else in her realm. So why do you care? So you must have something that I want or need, and that's Ezra.
Exactly. And these are, man, there are so many. Once again, it's like be careful what you wish for. And we knew this was going to happen, is that you get some questions answered and you get what you want kind of, but now there's all these other questions that happen.
Well, and everybody said that, the Mandalorian is actually going to bridge a lot of things from the sequel trilogy. So it's like like we talked about on the Siege, like, okay, if that was actually a Snoke or a version of Snoke or whatever they were trying to create, like, that makes sense because people are always saying, well, where did he come from? If we see him created at some point, then we get like, oh, okay, this is where.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I mean, and I agree. And I think that is eventually what we are going to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It's going to be, I'll tell you though, this episode is the one that really like just put us into hyperspace.
This thing just shot it up a whole notch, man.
Yeah. This is, now it's really hard to wait until next week.
Definitely.
But, as always, we will be reviewing these shows. This time we'll do like one episode at a time.
Mm-hmm.
We will probably do it as the first segment of our Cantina every week. I think we're back on track now. So, yeah, we got a lot to think about and a lot to discuss. Again, if you guys are on Facebook at all, you can check us out, Head to Head, a Star Wars community on Facebook. We're a good group there. A lot of people that watch the show online actually discuss stuff in there. Dave Cossey's on there.
Yes, sir.
So he's always good to discuss anything you guys want. We actually got into a whole thing about how TIE fighters land and how people can get up in them, and big discussion. But you can check that out. We're going to do some Facebook group only stuff. You can also find us at Head to Head SW on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All kinds of opportunities to check us out. We're going to be doing a lot more reaction videos and things. Like I said, if you haven't checked out that Star Wars holiday special that we did, the link's in the comments. So I think that that's going to wrap it up. What do you guys think is going to happen with Thrawn, with Gideon? Pretty much, how do you guys think season 2 is going to end? That's really going to be the question. Dwight says, remember, they are supposed to be trying to mimic the MCU. Kinda. I don't think they're totally trying to do that, but they're trying to do different phases. That's true.
Yeah.
But whatever you guys are thinking, whether you're watching this live, of course, you still have some time to chat it with us. If you're watching the rebroadcast, definitely leave the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And please, like this video. It really helps us to bring more episodes to you.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.